This is Blake Temez with the Blake Temez podcast, where I speak as a Catholic layman to Catholic laymen about missional living, wisdom cultivation, and legacy building in service of Christ and his bride, the Church. Thanks for being here. For today's episode, I'm considering this card that I have about the topic of motivation and its relationship to learning and performance. Now, in a book by Fowler, published in 2017, motivation has been classified under two different types, optimal and suboptimal motivation. The suboptimal motivational outlooks are the disinterested outlook, the external, and the imposed, with the optimal motivational outlooks being the aligned outlook, the integrated, and the inherent. Now, to break this down at least into those initial two types, setting aside the subtypes for just a moment, when we look at the optimal and the suboptimal, we have this paradigm in which motivation is not something that you have more or less of simply. Some might be inclined to say, I want to be more motivated, or this person doesn't seem motivated enough, or different phrases like that. But in reality, everyone is motivated. It's just a matter of the type. So I want to pause and reflect on that shift from thinking of motivation as a quantity to thinking of motivation as a characteristic or an element with different qualities to it. Now, of course, when it comes to things that relate to our goals and making advances in our life, the quality of motivation that we would desire for those ends would be optimal. And the optimal outlooks are those that are aligned, integrated, and inherent. Again, those subtypes. And in each of those, there's this felt experience of the activities and the conversations and the tasks, all the things that go to make up your movement towards those goals as them being something located within one's value structure. And because of that, there's this higher degree of ability to persevere and continue to move forward and avoid burnout, because there's not as much cognitive friction when it comes to performing these tasks, because there's some type of at least aligned, if not inherent, pleasure felt resonance when it comes to pursuits in this realm. On the other hand, when there's suboptimal motivation at work and the outlooks are disinterested, external, or imposed, there's going to be a greater deal of dissonance and friction and the danger of burnout when it comes to those activities, because of the way that they're misaligned or simply derived from the outside of the person, right? So there's this felt sense of imposition rather than an internal drive or source of forward movement from the inside. And so let's apply these motivational outlooks, at least the main two types, the optimal and the suboptimal, to faith formation, religious education, and discipleship. It's obvious to those who have worked with, let's take young people, for example, and we can generalize this, but let's start with one demographic, that there's often complaints from church ministers and parents and teachers that young people are not motivated to pursue the faith, to be active in it. And that's one way to look at it. But again, with this lens of motivational outlooks, we want to take another look. So it's more helpful to look at, again, the same young people and not say that they're not motivated or they don't have enough motivation, but to take a more careful look at what type of motivation are they working with? What type of outlook do they have? Because if the adults in their lives are complaining about a lack of motivation, it's most likely that what they're actually observing is a disinterested or an external or an imposed motivational outlook, where these things related to religion, related to following Jesus, related to practices and disciplines of the faith are hitting these young people as something coming from the outside rather than there being an internal impulse to engage with them. And so that comes off to adults as being lacking in motivation. But if we understand it as being a quality difference and not just a quantity difference, then as a mentor or a missionary or a minister, you can go deeper and focus activities on there being a shift in motivational outlook rather than simply driving the same things and just trying to drive them harder and potentially reinforcing an imposed sense of motivation or an external sense of motivation. And so driving the young people even further away from those activities or from those mindsets in the process, counterintuitively. And so if we're aiming for an aligned or an integrated or an inherent motivational outlook for these young people in regards to, let's say, weekly attendance at Mass on Sundays, or a daily habit of prayer, or frequent and personal contact with the impoverished in service activities, whatever it might be, we're going to be looking for ways to help them to self-reflect and get deeper into themselves and connect those activities to value structures and worldviews that are aligned or integrated with those activities. You can think about ways that value structures around the desire to belong, the desire for community, the desire for a greater purpose can be recognized and touched in some way when it comes to catechesis about the Mass, when it comes to the Mass as an expression of belonging to a people, belonging in a group of friends, belonging to a history and a tradition, and having that be a path of entry to addressing the needs and the value structures of the young people when presenting a point of a discipline or practice. And there could be other examples. And so, including a challenge for you listening today, consider first with yourself your motivational outlook when it comes to various activities related to the faith. You can apply this to other realms as well when it comes to tasks at home or relationships or whatever it is. But think about whether they're optimal or suboptimal. Are you experiencing an internal impulse from within to carry out the activity with a felt sense of meaning and purpose, sometimes even pleasure in carrying out the activity? Or does it seem merely external or imposed? And cultivate an awareness about when you're feeling that difference and then go deeper as to perhaps why. And starting there with your self-awareness so that you can help others develop their own awareness in these different facets of their life as well. A quick side note, I believe, or at least it seems to me right now, that there's always going to be this process of navigating these motivational outlooks in our life, right? There's always going to be, for example, dishes to do, floors to mop, um, diapers to change, things like that. And so it's not necessarily the case where we're just trying to like max out our motivational outlook in every area of life, where there's never a sense of like disinterest or never a sense of misalignment or anything like that. That's going to be unrealistic, unattainable, like by nature, right? Um, and that word nature comes to mind because when we're pursuing these things naturally, it's always going to be a type of process, a daily re-engaging, maintaining awareness, and then moving from there. So um, I just want to say that because if you're like me, there can be a counterproductive emphasis on the product, such that there can be burnout or discouragement counterintuitively when trying to optimize, motivation and cultivate an interior sense of encouragement, right? And so I think that process mindset is always essential. So that's it for me for today. As always, thank you for your time and attention, and God bless you in all your efforts. Peace. If you're a young Catholic man or a mentor, missionary, or minister who works with them, or even just a concerned figure in their life, a parent, uncle, whoever it might be on the lookout for the release of a short guide that I'm putting together called Brothers by Blood: How to Forge a New Path for Catholic Manhood. In it, I'll expand on some of the topics in this podcast and give you some points of reflection to see about how you can be a part of a movement that empowers men and brings them to their full potential for their sake, and also for the benefit of the church, and by extension, the benefit of all society. So again, thank you for being a part of this, and look out for more information about the release of my guide in episodes to come.